Councillor LaRue. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Rebior, and I'm the Director of Finance and Treasurer for the Town of Penetanguishene. I would like to thank all of our residents in attendance for taking time out of your day to attend this community engagement Let's Talk Budget event. At this time, I would like to introduce council and staff members that are in attendance. Mayor Doug Rawson, Deputy Mayor Dan Rose, Councillor Doug LaRue, Councillor Bill Waters, and staff that are in attendance, the Chief Administrative Officer, Jeff Lees, over here, and our clerk, Stacy Cooper. Director of Planning over here is Andrea Betty. Director of Recreation and Community Services, Sherry Desjardins, and then Brian Murray, Director of Transportation and Environmental Services. As well, I would like to point out Linda Keenan, Chief Executive Officer from the Penetanguishene Public Library. Sarah Marshall, helping me put this event together, communications and internet technology. Is Christine here? No, okay. The Town of Penetanguishene is committed to ensuring our budget development process engages residents and provides opportunities for input. Following our budget survey that was published last spring, we held an evening budget public consultation December 7th last year. And this afternoon is another opportunity for our residents to provide input. In addition, as always, the public can attend any of our special committee of the whole budget meetings. We have held two so far, November 30th and December 21st. And our next one will be held on January 25th at 7 p.m. in council chambers. During this afternoon's event, I will be presenting a very high-level summary of the status of our current draft budget, with less emphasis on me talking, unlike the last public consultation where I felt like I talked for an hour, but this will be more high level to allow more time for our residents to ask questions, as well as talk to any council and staff member that are here. All of our budget documents from our previous meetings in detail and summary form are located on our website. And after my brief presentation, there will be a group question and answer period. And then we're going to follow that with an opportunity for a meet and greet with any staff or council member that's in attendance. So quickly, I'll just summarize, how did we get here? January 20, the information in the presentation today is considered draft number 4 after management and our previous committee of the whole budget meetings. Draft number 4 will be discussed and presented in more detail on January 25th. But we did kick off our budget process back in April and May, as I mentioned, with our timeline and the budget surveys. In June, we set our budget goals and objectives, and staff were directed at that time to bring forward a draft budget of no more than a 2.25% net tax impact. July, August, and September into October, the department worked on their individual 3-year operating budgets, as well as a 10-year capital plan. Draft number 1 that was done by the management team came in around $593,000 or a 5.1% tax impact. So obviously we met together as a management team and reviewed the consolidated management budget and refined it and reduced it to what we then presented to council in November, which was 2.25% tax impact as directed. Town operating budget in November that was presented to our new council was a $194,000 increase or 1.65% tax impact. Town capital was a $50,000 increase or a 0.4% tax impact. Policing budget was $19,470 increase over last year or a 0.17% tax impact. And again, as I mentioned, in December, we then held our first, our public consultation, our first budget public consultation on December 7th. That was followed by our second special committee of the whole budget meeting, December 21st, where we presented some changes that were directed in November. And then at draft 3, we were looking at $371,000 increase or about a 3.17% tax impact. Following our December 21st meeting, we made those changes, which I am now presenting this afternoon, and we'll call that draft number 4. We're looking at a $411,000 impact year over year, or a 3.5% tax impact. And I will go through the details of how we got to those figures. Again, as I mentioned, our next special committee of the whole budget meeting is January 25th. Following that, we will be presenting to council on February 8th, where we anticipate budget approval. So our 2023 budget from all funding sources, which would include things such as taxation, our water rates, our wastewater rates, development charges that we use, debt, if that comes into play, as well as our reserves and reserve funds. So when you're looking at the total budget for 2023 from all funding sources, in addition to taxation, the 2023 draft budget is currently at $19.6 million, which is $2.6 million lower than 2022, but that would just be from a capital program that is less for 2023 than in 2022. For example, in 2022, we had a very large, very expensive Chatham Street reconstruction project, which boosted up our capital program in 2022. This slide just shows the different sections or divisions within the town that the total operating and capital budget is spent on. And transportation and environmental, always the number one section where we do spend our money, so that's 28% of our total budget, and water and wastewater 16%. Followed by finance and corporate services at 15%. Fire would be included in there. Recreation and community services, policing, water, planning and development, library and building round out the rest of our budget at 13% to 1%. If we look at the same slide, but for the rate-supported departments, so that would be water and wastewater and the building department. So the revenues that those departments generate are to support their own budget in terms of operating and capital requirements. The 2023 draft rate-supported budget is about $5.1 million compared to the 2022 rate-supported budget of almost $5.3 million. So again, $200,000 less than last year, but again, that's mainly due to the lower capital program in 2023 than in 2022. And now if we look at the total tax-supported budget for operating and capital, this slide just shows that the 2023 current draft tax levy is $12.1 million compared to last year's tax levy at $11.7 million. which is the $411,000 year-over-year increase that I mentioned earlier, and the 3.5% tax impact. And if you look at obviously the number one division or section that we spend that tax levy, it is in transportation and environmental, which is looking at a 2% increase over the prior year. And that would also include our transit that falls under T&E. Finance and corporate services is 1.1% increase over the prior year, and that does include, that section does include the fire and emergency services department, and 1% of that is actually for the fire department. Policing is 0.2%, recreation and community services is lower than 2022. Again, that's related to the capital program. And we will see some differences when we move to the next slide in terms of operating versus capital. Planning and development is 0.8% increase over the prior year. And the little library is 0.8% tax impact, 18% year over year. So the current draft, as I mentioned, is currently sitting at 3.5% tax impact, or $411,000 increase over last year. And this slide just shows, and I will point out the major drivers of that, of those changes, and how we got to 3.5%. So obviously, due to collective bargaining agreements and some new legislation that came in, as well as the cost of benefits and so on and so forth, we do have salaries, wages, remuneration, and benefits for council employees, boards, and volunteer firefighters at $239,000, or 2% increase. Policing, we do have about $115,000 increase over the last year at 1%. Library operating budget increase, $86,000, or 0.7%. We also have a new debt repayment in our budget related to the purchase of 51 Dunlop Street. So that's about almost $57,000. 0.5% on our tax impact. Insurance, again, which it has been increasing, just the environment of municipal insurance. Our costs are increasing every year. That is a $52,000 increase in our current budget at 0.4%. And then the capital items relate to the roads preventative maintenance program, as well as the sidewalk maintenance program. So we do have $50,000 increases to each of those programs in 2023 for 0.4% tax impact for each of those. Transit, that we contract obviously to the town of Midland. So there's almost a $44,000 increase for transit. And then also included in this draft is $31,000 for some staffing changing related to reallocating 2 positions related to the harbor master and the winter road patroller. So in all, we are looking at about 6.2% in increases to our budget, but along with those, we do have some increased revenues or transfer from reserves to offset those major budget changes. Supplemental and omitted tax revenues are on the rise in terms of the growth and sometimes the delayed receipt of supplementary tax revenues that we get once MPAC has assessed new homes being built in the community. So we've increased our revenues there. During last spring, council did direct us to utilize our tax stabilization reserve, that we do put money away from new growth for years such as this where we're trying to stabilize the tax impact. So there is $95,000 currently in the draft budget, And as well, there's an anticipated, estimated new assessment growth of about $164,000, which brings us to where we are today in draft number 4 at $411,000. When we look at it just from operating, it's $292,000 or 2.5%. Capital is an increase over last year of $100,000 or 0.85%. Policing is about $19,000, rounded to 0.2%. And again, our total draft tax levy right now is $12.1 million. When we look at the current draft budget and how it impacts your tax bill from the municipal perspective, this does not take into account anything actual from the county or the province for education. We don't get those tax rates until typically March, late March or early April. But we have done an estimate. So based on the current budget and the 3.5%, that would be $36.34 increase per $100,000 of current value assessment when of an average single family dwelling. When we do take it into account an estimate for the county and the provincial education tax rate, the overall blended tax rate on your tax bill is expected to impact by 3.1%. or $46 per $100,000 worth of current value assessment. So when those numbers, that is just an estimate, when those tax rates do come in, it typically does bring the overall tax impact on your tax bill lower, because the growth that the county is seeing is in the southern end of the county versus the northern end of the county. So their budget requirements are allocated based on assessment, where it's a lot higher assessment based down in areas such as Bradford versus Penetanguishene in the north. So 3.1% is where we're at overall on your estimated tax bill. But like I said, it typically does reduce even further when we get those actual rates from the county and the province. The next slide is just a brief slide on how your tax bill is calculated. And again, this sample is just the municipal tax levy, which is for the town's budget in terms of operating, capital, and policing. So what we do is, obviously, we work on our municipal budget and how much money do we need on an annual basis to operate, provide the services that the town provides, as well as do the capital projects that are in the annual capital program. And in this case, we're currently at a total municipal budget of $19.6 million. And then obviously we generate revenues, we use reserves, we have development charges, etc., in the amount of $7.5 million. So the difference between the two would be what we were looking at in terms of our municipal tax levy of $12.1 million. The municipal tax levy then is divided by our total current value assessment in the town. So the Municipal Property Corporation provides us with the assessment roll for the entire town. And using last year's as an example of $1.2 billion, you come up with your municipal tax rate. And again, this is last year's example. And then if you were to take the average residential current value assessment of an average single family dwelling of $250,300, and you multiply that by our tax rate that was calculated, then it would come up with an average municipal tax bill of about $2,591. Again, that's just for the town only, so it doesn't include the county and the education portion. This slide is just a visual of how your tax dollar is spent. There's also a enlarged sign over there that shows the exact same slide. So basically, for every dollar that the town collects for our levy, not including the county and the education portion, capital infrastructure is where the highest amount of the dollar goes at 21 cents. Public works and roads is 19 cents. Policing is 17 cents. Recreation is 11 cents. Fire and emergency services is 6 cents. And so on and so forth. So that's about, I believe it's about 74 cents out of every dollar goes to those bottom 5 that I just mentioned. Capital, roads, policing, recreation, and fire. At the back of the room, we also have a list of spending priorities, and it's an engagement activity if you want to participate following this presentation. We do have a list of spending priorities, and you can provide your input on how we should change spending your tax dollar and increase or decrease in certain areas. This is a brief summary of the historical tax rate increases that we have seen over the past 8 years. From 2015 to 2022, as well as the 2023 current estimate. And the 8-year average overall tax rate increase for town, policing, the county, and the education has been 0.4% per year. Within that 0.4% per year is the 8-year average of the town's tax increase for operating capital and policing, which has been 1.7% per year. Versus the current estimate, which I mentioned, the town is currently at 3.5%, but that would overall, when you add the county and the education tax rates to it, that would reduce, currently the estimate is 3.1%. Along with approving our 2023 operating budget, Council does also approve 2 years of our capital program for 2023 capital projects, as well as 2024 capital projects. And the total 2023 capital program from all funding sources is $5.4 million. And the tax only within that 5.4 million is 2.4 million. So the other 3 million we use other funds, as I mentioned, reserves, reserve funds, subsidies, etc. So our 8-year average is 2.2 million per year. So currently, the tax that we're investing in our capital program is higher than our 8-year average. Again, transportation and environmental is always where we spend the most of our capital investment at 59%. Finance and corporate services, which includes fire, which is a big capital investment, is at 27%. Recreation is at 8%. Planning and development 5%, and the library is at 1%. The next slide is the 2024 capital investment. Very similar to 2023 at 5.5 million in total, and the taxation portion of that is 2.5 million, which again is higher than our 8-year average of investing our taxation dollars into capital of 2.2 million on average per year. And the share for transportation and environmental in 2024 has increased to 67%, but that's not unusual. The bulk of our capital investment is always into our roads and related projects under transportation and environmental. So as far as our 2023 and 2024 capital program, this is just a high level total of what we plan on spending. But at the back of the room, we do have 2 years worth of capital projects in detail, which is what council reviews when they're looking at approving our 2-year capital program. And again, it's another exercise if you want to get involved, and there are stickers back there where you can provide your input on what is important to you and what is not important to you in that 2-year capital program. And that's the completion of the high-level summary of where we are at currently with our 2023 budget process. We are going to have a group question and answer. Right now, anybody can stand up and introduce yourself and ask a question of staff, council, or myself. Following the group question and answer period, we're then going to break out and just do a one-on-one meet and greet where staff and council will still be here, and you can speak to us individually, to whomever you want, or you can go to any of those activities that we've got at the back. And don't forget to put your name in for the door prizes that we're gonna draw after this group question and answer period. So I would like to thank you for your time, and the floor is open to you, the residents, if anybody has any questions, comments.
I would like to know why the seniors in Penicillin are not